Hey guys, what's going on, and welcome to part 1 of a new little series to do with things Bloodborne did. And this is going to be things that Bloodborne got wrong. Now, we've picked 8 points, and we're probably going to pick maybe not as much on the next video for things that Bloodborne got right. But anyway, we're not going to waste the time, let's just fucking get into it. Let's get the bad stuff out the way so we can end on a high note in the next episode. First things first, Arcane is garbage.
It is incredibly underpowered because when you compare it to the amount of stats you need to invest in it to actually get the effects out of it, it's so dumb. It's so dumb.
It's like you invest 50 in Arcane and you can do the equivalent damage with nothing in Blood Tinge.
Pretty much. Not only that, you're using more bullets, so if you add up the amount of damage you'd be doing with your gun compared to the amount you'd be doing with the
damage
spells,
per bullet is insanely low for Arcane.
Exactly. Not only that, you can't hit with most of them.
There's only 4 offensive spells, being the Tiny Tonitrus, the Call Beyond, Augur Vibriatus, and the fucking Executioner's Glove, and they're all garbage too.
Exactly. So if you want to make an offensive Arcane build, you have 4 spells, good luck. So it could have been handled much better, for instance using cooldowns or max uses, which wouldn't affect your bullets, which would made it more worthwhile, which would give you a bit of extra offensive stuff as opposed to taking away from your main offensive thing, which would be your gun, which you can also use for parries. What
you're doing is you're investing 50 points in Arcane and removing the ability to parry because your bullet use is going to be solely your little fucking hunter's tools that just aren't worth it.
Pretty much. So I mean, the benefits really don't counteract it. I mean, admittedly, the Hunter's Bone and the Beast Roar is kind of okay, and they don't require a lot of Arcane investment. So at least it's
15 Arcane. The Beast Roar uses 2 bullets. The Hunter's Bone uses 5. You can blood bullets, and that should get a free Hunter's Bone use.
Yeah.
I mean, these ones are good. Like these ones can be used well, but
an investment in the stat just isn't worth it.
Not at this point. We're anticipating a buff though. I'm anticipating a buff of Arcane at some point.
We can only hope, Stephen.
If they don't, then what's the fucking point? It's just the new resistance. And bringing us on to point number 2, on the opposite end of the totem pole, Blood Tinge is fucking retarded.
When you compare the amount of damage you get for investing into Blood Tinge and then adding up the amount of damage you could do to something with all your bullets compared to the amount of damage you do with any of the fucking spells, you'd be a complete idiot to go for Arcane.
I just realised something that we hadn't even thought about to do with Blood Tinge. It's amazing. Remember how we were talking about how damage per bullet with Blood Tinge compared to Arcane? What about Blood Tinge versus every other build, damage per stamina use? Because guns don't cost stamina. And your Evelyn does 200 fucking damage a hit without Bone Mash, and when you use the fucking Bone Mash, it's like fucking 1,000.
You hit a guy for like 800 in one shot one time. So when you look at that, Blood Tinge...
More than one guy of one shot.
Blood Tinge is just crazy. Everybody has a gun, and then you use them to parry, so if you hit them with that, and then you parry, you pretty much kill anyone.
Oh, I mean, if you're able to parry someone, you just get 200 free damage because of your Evelyn. Not to mention your Chikage does like the highest damage in the fucking game with the transform attack. It is retarded. And
then you've got the gems on top of that.
Oh, and the Chikage is also broken because physical gems affect the blood attack damage as well, so you can just stack on 3 27% physical gems and your Chikage does more damage than a fucking cannon.
And then when you compare the fact that the amount of selection you have for Arcane compared to the amount of versatility that you have with Blood Tinge, I don't know why unless you just want to have fun with Arcane, sure, that's fine.
Yeah. You will never be at a disadvantage with Blood Tinge.
Exactly.
But you will always be at a disadvantage if you're using Arcane because it's just not comparable to other builds. Things. Yes, it's just you just can't compare it to other builds. They're just not good enough. But that about does it for why Blood Tinge is fucking ridiculous. And coming completely off the track of what's OP and what isn't, let's go with what is lacking, and that's weapons and equipment in general. There's like very few
weapons and armors, especially in compared to other Souls games. Now admittedly the quality of each weapon is higher, but remember in Dark Souls 2 there was a lot of weapons that combined movesets and all such things.
There was some special stuff. Dark Souls 2 there was power stancing. I mean, we do have trick weapons where each weapon sort of doubles as a second weapon other than a few of them. So you can sort of say that like, maybe there's an extra few weapons in the game because they are all good weapons.
But definitely not compared to the other games. And then by transition of property, there's a lot of, or rather lack of, viable builds because of really the lack of general equipment and the lack of different playstyles and the lack of spells. There's only 8 guns and even less of them are usable.
if you prefer quality over quantity, then you won't, like me, you won't really have a problem with a lack of weapons, because I think they're all really well balanced, but it definitely is going to hurt Bloodborne in the long run when there isn't that much replay value, because there's not that many different ways to play the game.
Or even different things to try out. Plus, you know, I was thinking there was lots of runes and stuff, but they're really just better versions of each other, and there isn't that many crazy different effects. So
there's about 12 runes, and they all have tier 1, 2 and 3, I think. I think there's about 12.
But even at that, you know, there definitely could have been more.
And moving on to our next point, the game doesn't want you to play it. By that I mean that the entire game goes against PvP, in a game that FromSoft must have known would be pretty heavily used in PvP.
Yeah, the length of Dark Souls, Dark Souls 2, Demon Souls were all extended massively by, you know, the PvP side of things.
And this time they've went against it with stuff like the HP cuts for invaders and cooperators. For some reason they brought that back.
There's no red sign soapstone equivalent.
Yeah, there's no convenient way to just go, wanna fight me? Okay. There's none of that. You have to go through this fucking massive you need to jump through loops and fucking sit and play dead just to get the dungeon that you need so you can PvP with the people you want to PvP with.
The way the game works, it works well in PvE, but when you
not
translate
so much
to
in
PvP, it does encourage spamming quite a lot, especially for the guns and things. And then
gun spam with the shotguns is fucking ridiculous because of the stagger. I cannot stand it. So, along with the gun spam, what we're also seeing are people using all 3 visceral runes to get the 60% bonus, and they're just L2, 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 L2 until they get the parry, and then they press R1 once and that's you dead because you can't possibly survive.
What the game really needed was just an arena where 2 players can go at it with a certain amount of bullets, a certain amount of vials, and no HP cut. That's all we wanted from, and you just don't want to give us that. You just don't want to give us it.
I mean, they gave us it in Dark Souls 2, and they didn't give us it in this one.
Exactly, so why? Just a step backwards. Just straight up step backwards.
And on the subject of PvP, another gripe we have with the game is how they went 3 games, and they finally made progress on the Covenants in a really big way in Dark Souls 2, and then just went, you know what? Fuck it. There's basically 0 Covenants, because the Covenants don't fucking do anything.
They had the potential to make the Covenants so good, learn from their mistakes, and they just did not give a singular fuck.
There's only one viable Covenant, I suppose you could call it, and it's the one that gives you stamina regen, because it's the only one that doesn't put you at a disadvantage in PvP.
Pretty much.
Like, if you're not using that Covenant, then you're not PvPing right.
Which then brings you on to the fact of the game requires a retarded amount of farming and grinding for items because they're all finite. Like, in PvE, playing against some bosses, you've died a bunch of times. Game, stop. You need to go back to the Arnhem to get all your blood vials back again. This is just, it kills the flow of the game so hard.
And in PvP, I've won 6 invasions. I've no flasks or vials because the game doesn't refill me when I win. Why the fuck does the game not refill us when we win invasions? Now I have to kill myself, or go back to Hunter's Dream and then warp back in and just completely break the flow that I'm in. Just, I'm in the zone, I don't want to do that, but now I need to do that because FromSoft.
This could all have been alleviated with, I mean, in Dark Souls 1 it was nothing like this because you could just go to the bonfire, that's you, bang, done. But
yeah,
nothing.
But
nothing
because they've went with the Demon Souls sort of warping system, there is no rest to replenish option, which is fucking stupid. So, good news, we're coming to the end of the video. And these are sort of smaller ones. Let's start with probably the smallest one, and that is that the jump button has been mapped back to circle again.
Why? Why from?
Everyone loved L3 jump. L3 jump was like...
It made sense.
It was the best addition. It was like the best thing that they did from... It was the biggest step forward from Dark Souls 1 to Dark Souls 2 was the L3 jump. And I'm not even joking, like that changed the game.
Carry being its own stat.
No, that changed. The L3 jump changed the game for
me. But this means that you can't run into a roll anymore. You just run into a jump, which we didn't want. So thanks, FromSoft. The next one being no soul vessel. Yeah, okay, sure. The lack of equipment and stuff means that you don't need to play the game that many times to get builds to use all the weapons. But if you fuck up a build by accident or something, there's no way of rectifying it. You just need to play the game all over again.
It was the same issue with Dark Souls 1, of course, but I mean that's just the way it is. But The good thing about there being no soul vessel is there's really, outside of hybrid builds, there's really only 5 builds in the game to make: strength, skill, blood tinge, arcane, and quality. And if you make a strength build, you can use every strength weapon. If you make a skill build, you can use every skill weapon. So I mean, you only really need to play through the game 5 times, and you can use every single fucking weapon on each of the builds, other than hybrids, of course. So there's not really as much of a need for soul vessel, but it's still one of those little luxuries that I'd like to have.
Yeah, and then finally, I think the biggest gripe about the game.
Oh yeah, like you have no idea. This is worse than the jump being mapped back to circle.
You know what it is, so just enjoy.
Didn't get a chance to heal. Didn't get a chance to heal, fucking.